Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Relationship Atlas podcast. I'm your host, Coach Atlas, and I'm a relationship coach who helps people build, create, and sustain safe, secure, stable, and successful relationships. And this podcast is aimed to provide skills, tools, strategies, and a deepened awareness on how exactly we can start doing that. So today, to help contribute to that, I want to talk about the power of your nonverbal communication and how we can start to both recognize, become aware of, and shift the way we express ourselves without words so that we can create a more safe environment, a more secure environment, a more stable conversation, a more loved and connected and intimate dynamic between us and our partner in our relationship. And this will also help us understand life outside of relationship when it comes to how we express with our coworkers, our friends, our family, and so on. And so when we talk about nonverbal cues, I want to share a study that was done. It's called the Still Face with Dads study. And in that study, they had a dad and their child playing. And play as usual, very exciting, laughter, lots of facial expressions, lots of interaction. And after a couple of minutes, the father would be cued to look away for however many seconds and then look back. And when they looked back, they had a still face and they were looking slightly away from the child. And so over the course of the next couple of seconds, the child acknowledges the father's return to the space, but then starts to recognize the father isn't fully there. And you can see this in its tense interaction. You can see it in its face. It's confused, or at least it seems to be confused. And this is reinforced by a reach for dad or a exciting movement to get dad's response, but dad remains still faced and slightly looking away. Then over the course of the next few seconds, the child starts to look around, trying to figure out, is there anybody else in this space that can acknowledge what I'm up to, can acknowledge me, can be responsive and available for me? And sure enough, no one's around. And so a couple of seconds pass and the child's still getting curious. And eventually, it only takes maybe a minute or two for the child to start becoming very upset, angry, frustrated, sad. It starts getting more physical, trying to get out of its chair or its stroller. And eventually, less than 3 minutes, they get the father to start interacting again and repairing that stressful experience for the child. And I think that this specific study has pretty powerful implications for how we operate as adults because it's very known now that our childhood relationships with our parents and the level of availability and responsiveness directly determines how we respond to our adult relationships when it comes to availability and responsiveness. What we're looking for is someone that's available to us and someone that is responsive to us. And a lot of that is in a timely manner. And that's exactly what we're looking for as a child. And so the two coming together help reinforce the necessity of being aware or being more conscious of the impact of our nonverbal cues. Let's talk about more nonverbal cues. So, nonverbal obviously means you're not speaking, you're not using words, there's no linguistic conversation here. I don't know how I personally feel about tone being a nonverbal cue because it is speaking, it is used with words. However, tone can sometimes be involved. I'm not going to speak to tone today. I'm going to speak specifically to the body. Right? What is your body doing? Whether it's your face, your hands, your arms, your legs, and so on. I want you to consider the next time you go out to a work meeting or the mall or specifically at the food court in the mall or anywhere where somebody is sitting, a group of people are sitting. And I want you to pay specific attention to the men. And the reason that I want to encourage this is because what you will likely notice is a lot of men tapping their leg or jumping or pressing down on the ground, tapping, doing this little fidget thing with their leg. And what I just want to encourage you to get curious about is, why do you think that that's happening? That would be an example of communicating without knowing you're communicating, right? People interpret that. And so my initial interpretation would be that person is anxious, stressed, possibly overwhelmed. It could also mean that they really need to get somewhere. They're in a rush, they're in a hurry, something's urgent. It could also mean that they're distracted, not present. They don't even know that they're doing this and it's just happening. And so it could be a physical representation of a unenjoyable experience in their body. And this is the way of moving that energy. Right? So a lot can be interpreted in that. Now I want to take us backwards all the way to childhood. There's a classic example of a little young boy who likes a young girl, because he hasn't built the communication skills, because generally speaking, a lot of young boys aren't taught how to speak, aren't taught how to communicate the way that they feel. He will communicate through his physical actions. So he's not speaking, he's not saying I like you, he's not saying you're cute, he's not saying you're beautiful, he's not saying much. What he's doing is he's shoving, poking, right? He's physically engaging with this person to say, hey, listen, I'm into you, right? Such a powerful example of nonverbal communication and how that is normally interpreted or traditionally interpreted. Now, on the flip side, a little girl might not also say anything, right? What the little boy is looking for is an acknowledgement from her body. Does she smile? Does she blush? Does she maybe push back in a fun, playful way? He's looking for an acknowledgement that, hey, I'm expressing I like you in this way. If you express it the same way back, I know you like me too. Right? So all these nonverbal cues are constantly happening. So we look at a baby with its dad and the shift in facial expression. We look at young childhood, right, where we're still learning communication skills, and so we're expressing nonverbally. And now you can go all the way to adulthood, right, with the example of witnessing men tapping their knee. But I also want you to consider the way that men and women speak to each other. So, specifically meaning men to men, and actually a lot of times men to women. A man will not face the person they're speaking to, they will stand beside them. So, if you ever look at a group of guys or even just two guys, they will not sit face to face, they will sit side to side or stand side to side. And this shift in body language, right, can represent the fact that maybe they're uncomfortable with the closeness, the eye contact, maybe it's intimate or too connected. And so it's safer to just stand side by side. You're not a threat if you're in front of me, so it could be a safety measure. But then how you know that that is really happening is you just look at how women talk to each other. They tend to be face to face. They tend to be very engaging, close, and possibly physically. And so the differences in body language represent a form of communication. We speak through our body. Now let's start to apply this to our relationship dynamic and the small cues that we don't know we're sharing or communicating. So when we think about a smile, it's a pretty easy one, right? I smile, therefore I'm acknowledging what you're saying. It might be funny, it might be exciting, it might, just be oh yeah, cool, right? But what I want you to also consider is how every human can acknowledge or recognize the difference between a real smile and a fake smile. So when you're not present, when you're distracted, when you're not engaged in the story, or you actually don't want to smile and you smile anyway, your physical attributes do look different. And they did a study where a half smile doesn't create the crow's feet in your eyes, right? But a real authentic smile really raises those cheeks and really gets it up there. And it's a lot of effort to fake all the way up there. And so we only just kind of let it half smile. So it can represent a lot to the person that we're speaking to. It can be an interpretation of, oh, was that not really that happy or exciting or joyful or funny? Right? It can be interpreted that way. So a smile is powerful. Crossed arms is another classic one. Again, it's left up to interpretation, but when I cross my arms in the heat of an argument, right, I may be representing, I'm closed off to this, I don't want to hear it, I'm not in this, or it could also mean I'm really uncomfortable with what's being said. Maybe I'm not closed off, I'm just really uncomfortable. And again, right, not that we have to force our body to be open to things, but it is a conversation about what is the impact uh, on our partner? What are they experiencing through our nonverbal cues? Let's talk about a couple other ones. Stonewalling, right? For a lot of men, including myself, who have a history of stonewalling, we're not speaking, right? We're not going out of our way to belittle, berate, or anything. We're very quiet, but we're also dead face. Now, you go back to the study done on children, that dead face sparks and triggers that baby's system. And so it will do the same in our relationship dynamic. When somebody is dead face, when we're talking to them, they're not expressing anything, it can be viewed or felt like rejection, abandonment, or a lack of availability. It also is unresponsive. And that unresponsiveness physically can be interpreted or experienced as, again, abandonment, rejection, judgment, and so on. But again, what we're witnessing here in this conversation is not that we are going out of our way to create that environment, but it is a repercussion of our physical cues. And so, why we're having this conversation is to bring that awareness higher so we can start to change or exchange our old physical cues for new ones. So, for example, if you want your partner to feel safe, secure, and open with talking to you, then I would suggest you don't cross your arms, close your eyes, have a dead face, and so on, right? None of that's going to be very inviting physically. So the other side would look like open arms. You look like facing them. It would look like eye contact. It would look like a actual physical representation of I am in this with you. I want to hear about this. Another example would be touching while talking, right? A lot of couples that fight, but when they fight, they're holding hands or they're touching in some way that can actually show like, hey, I'm available and I'm responsive to this conversation. We talked about the smile one. When we look away or we avoid eye contact, it's again not something that we need to fix. It's just something we need to be aware of. When we do look away, or we're not present with our eyes or with our face, that can be interpreted as a lack of availability and a lack of responsiveness and a lack of attention, and also a lack of care. And so, whether those are true or not is irrelevant. What's relevant is the impact of how we're presenting ourselves and how we want our partner to feel. So you go back to the conversation at the beginning where we talked about the study done with physical representation of cues. Actually, that isn't something that I spoke about. Let's touch on that quickly. There was a study done where this woman would talk about something and she'd say, I have this really big idea, but her hands would gesture something small, like only about this wide or whatever. And in that conversation of saying I have really something big to talk about, the other person is interpreting that it's actually not that big, it's not that important, and that I don't really know if I should believe you or not. Right. Then again, you talk about the arms wide open. I have something really big to tell you or to share with you. It's this big. And that person now understands how big it is, how important and big this is. And so the intention from the words matches the actions of the arms. So this is another example of how intention meets impact. If our physical cues are closed and shut off, but we're telling the person, I'm open to this conversation, well, the two are going to be confusing. And the system, which is naturally inclined to safety, isn't going to believe the positive. It's going to believe the negative because it needs to protect itself. And so, even though our intention is to be present and listen, and that's what we're telling ourselves in our mind, our physical cues are not aligning, and therefore, our intention is not meeting the intended impact. So, what do we do with all of this information, right? Let's not beat our physical cues to a pulp here. Let's do something about it. So, what we do with this information, and we start to call ourselves forward. We start to say, hey, in my own system, in my own body, I wonder how I'm being interpreted right now. How do I want to be interpreted? Okay, well, I want to be interpreted as open. I want to be interpreted as available, responsive, and there for my partner. I need to shift the way my body looks and is being portrayed in order to be experienced differently. And I just want you to witness the subtle cues of how conversations go when you do that. when you internally call yourself forward, and instead of turning away, you turn towards, and just witness how your partner responds and witness how it changes the dynamic of the conversation. Right? Eye contact would be another great example. When you create eye contact in a conversation, you can generally sense like the conversation is deeper, it's more aligned, both of you are more present. They may be less reactive or less explosive because it's a very present experience. Right? The second thing that we do with this information is we bring grace and compassion to ourselves, because you're not going to get your physical cues perfect, but it's just simply about making progress towards your desired goal. Your desired goal is something you need to curate. Do I want my partner to feel safe, secure? Do I want my partner to feel open? Do I want all of the honest expressions of my partner? Do I want them to feel like they can be themselves? Great. Then, if that's the case, let's not only focus on the inviting words we're using, but also the inviting physical body expressions, right? I want all of you in here, right? I'm inviting you in. You can't see this, but I'm doing an inviting arm hand gesture. But then if I cross my arms and I say, I want all of you, I'm not inviting you physically. And therefore, you will not feel what I am intending in this experience. The third piece is just to simply allow us to recognize how we contribute to the space with our nonverbal cues or our nonverbal expressions, right? It's just simply an awareness piece so we can start to make that shift. It's like the conversation of being able to name it, to tame it, right? If I can name my emotion, then I can tame the emotion in more productive and effective ways. But if I don't have language for it, a lot of times that can feel like I'm coming up short. And so this is the same conversation where maybe your partner says, hey, you seem off. And you're thinking to yourself, I'm fine, there's nothing wrong. But what's missing in there is that you're not aware in that moment of how you're speaking without speaking. And so if we can bring awareness to that, we can actually get ahead of that. We know we're sullen, we know we're annoyed, we're stressed, we're whatever. Instead of waiting for our partner to pick up on our nonverbal cues, we can actually communicate a little bit more effectively and ahead of time, so that there isn't this confusion and we don't leave our partner thinking, hey, are they available or not? Are they responsive or not? The last piece is coming back to the conversation around biosphere. This conversation allows us to create the kind of environment we want in our relationship, which is that safety, that security, that stability. Words outside of that come up like welcoming, open, honest, authentic. All of our desired outcomes in a intimate relationship or in a friendship or a family relationship, all of our desired outcomes, this helps us understand how to contribute to that more effectively and more productively with things beyond just language, because words are great and they're always going to matter. You listening to this matters, but if you could witness it, you could sense and feel it more, right? Because we heal through relationship, we learn through relationship. And a lot of that is visual, right? Our eyes have so much power and control over that dynamic. They interpret so much. And so connecting the dots here between not just learning how to communicate more effectively with your words, but also learning how to effectively communicate with your physical cues and just being aware of the power of that. And I'll leave you with one piece here. I went to this men's group and they start every session with a gesture. And the gesture is a physical representation of how you're feeling right now. So instead of saying, hey, I would like to go around the circle and everyone, hey, can you just do a temp check? How are you feeling right now? And trying to linguistically word it well, it was a physical showing of how you feel. So my example, one of the times was I was really tired that day. I could feel I was so exhausted. So instead of telling people that, I actually would close my eyes, I would take a deep breath, and then I would get into the conversation, expressing through my body by laying down, right? But I also knew I was having difficulty sleeping. So I was kind of, my body would toss and turn a little bit. And what I'm showing them is a physical representation of that experience for me, right? And I'm so tired, I'm so overwhelmed, and then I'm stressed. So when I was laying down, I put my hands on my head, and I'm not speaking this whole time. And this gesture was being witnessed by other people, and they could interpret it correctly or incorrectly, that wasn't the point. The point was I get to express myself with my body and be held in a safe container doing so. And it was really powerful because it just reminded me of the importance of nonverbal cues and the value found in the way the body expresses itself, especially when we don't know that it's doing so. And a lot of us, including myself, are unaware of the small nuances like a real or fake smile, or crossed arms and open arms, and so on. So now with this conversation, we get to remain a little bit more in control, and we get to just be more in tune and attuned with what's happening in our environment and how we're contributing to that. That's the power of nonverbal communication. I hope there's some value in here for you. I hope that you're taking away a tidbit. If you did, if this was valuable for you, please subscribe, give me a rating on the podcast. Sorry, don't give me a rating, give the podcast a rating, give this information a rating, and make sure that you subscribe for more, right? This is just the beginning of the podcast. I appreciate you being here. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode.